It was a cold night on August 17th, 2001, when Marcia Oliveira, 43, and her husband Carlos Eduardo Mendez, 47, were last seen in the corridors of the Santa Casa de Misericordia Hospital in Porto Alegre. The temperature had dropped to 8 degrees Celsius that Friday, and a light rain was falling over the capital of Rio Grande do Sul. The couple had gone to the hospital to visit Marcia's father, Antonio Oliveira, 78 years old, hospitalized for 3 days due to heart complications. According to reception records, Marcia and Carlos arrived at the hospital at 7:12 p.m. and signed the visitor's book. Nurse Patricia Rodriguez, who was in charge of the unit that night, remembers that the couple seemed calm. They asked about Mr. Antonio's condition, and I informed them that he was stable. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary, he reported in his statement 3 days after the disappearance. Marcia worked as an accountant in an office in downtown Porto Alegre, while Carlos was a civil engineer at a medium-sized construction company. Married for 18 years, the couple had no children and lived in an apartment in the Moinhos de Vendo neighborhood, an upscale area of the city. They were known by their neighbors as reserved but cordial. Regina Marquez, who lived in the apartment next door for more than a decade, described them as a discreet couple who led a quiet and organized life. According to hospital security cameras later analyzed by the police, Marcia and Carlos remained in room 312, where Antonio was hospitalized for approximately 45 minutes. At 8:07 p.m., the footage shows the couple leaving their bedroom and walking down the third-floor hallway. The last recording shows them entering the elevator at 8:12 p.m. After that, inexplicably, there is no further visual record of his presence in the building. The first to report the disappearance was Antonio, who was surprised when his son Lucas, Marcia's brother, arrived to visit him the following morning and mentioned that he had not been able to contact his sister and brother-in-law since the previous night. They left here saying they were going home, but that they would return this morning, the old man told his son. Lucas, worried, tried calling his sister's cell phone again, but all calls went straight to voicemail. He then decided to go to the couple's apartment. When he got there, he found everything in perfect order. Their car, a silver 1999 Fiat Peo, was not in the garage, which initially made him think they might have traveled. However, upon checking the room, he noticed that the clothes were in the closets and there were no signs of preparation for a trip. It was at this moment that Lucas decided to file a police report. It was August 18th, 2001, Saturday at 2:47 p.m., when the disappearance of Marcia and Carlos was officially reported to the Missing Persons Police Station in Porto Alegre. I never imagined that visit to the hospital would be the last time I'd see them. Lucas said in an interview with the local press a week after the disappearance. They had no enemies. They weren't involved in anything illicit. They were an ordinary, hard-working couple who simply vanished without a trace. The first 72 hours after the disappearance was reported were crucial. The civil police mobilized an investigation team led by Chief Mauricio Ruda. The first step was to analyze the hospital security camera footage and question employees who were on duty that night. In addition to Nurse Patricia, 2 security guards, an elevator operator, and 5 patients who were hospitalized on the same floor as Antonio Oliveira were interviewed. None of them provided conclusive information about the couple's whereabouts after they entered the elevator. The couple's car was found 3 days later in the hospital's underground parking lot in space 143, which deepened the mystery. If they had left the hospital, why was the vehicle still there? And if they hadn't, where could they be inside a hospital monitored by cameras and with constant circulation of people? Initial searches focused on the hospital itself and its surroundings. Every corner of the immense hospital complex was searched by civil police teams supported by sniffer dogs. The result? No trace of the couple was found. If you want to follow more cases like this, which shake up society as a whole and reveal hidden truths, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any investigation. As the weeks passed, the investigation into the disappearance of Marcia Oliveira and Carlos Eduardo Mendez took on new dimensions. By September 15th, 2001, exactly 1 month after their disappearance, the police had already collected statements from more than 50 people, including hospital employees, family members, co-workers, and neighbors. The first theories emerged naturally. The most immediate suggested that the couple might have suffered some kind of sudden illness inside the hospital, such as an accident or health problem, and not received help in time. However, this hypothesis was quickly discarded after a thorough inspection of emergency care records and admission logs from all departments. Hospital. A hospital is a controlled environment with records of all movements. If they had suffered an accident or become ill within the facilities, we would have some record, explained Chief Arruda at a press conference held on September 20th, 2001. The second theory, initially considered more plausible, pointed to a possible kidnapping. The couple belonged to Porto Alegre's upper middle class and could have been targeted by criminals operating in the region. Acer's ransom demands, however, have weakened this line of investigation over time. A turning point occurred in October 2001, when Maria Helena Costa, a cleaning assistant who had worked at the hospital for more than 15 years, went to the police with an intriguing story. According to her, around 8:30 p.m. that night of August 17th, she had seen a couple matching description of Marcia and Carlos walking toward the old area of the hospital, where the historic chapel, built in 1914, was located. I was finishing my shift and caught a glimpse of them. The man seemed in a hurry, almost dragging the woman by the arm. I thought it was strange because that area was partially closed off for renovations, but I didn't pay much attention to it at the time, Maria Helena reported. This information opened a new line of investigation. The area around the old chapel and its surroundings were searched again, this time with greater attention. It was a historic building listed as a municipal heritage site, which had been restricted for months due to structural issues. The chapel was attached to one of the hospital's oldest wings, partially deactivated and awaiting renovations. However, searches in this area also yielded no concrete results. Investigators found only dust and debris typical of a building undergoing renovation. One detail, however, caught their attention. An access door to the back of the chapel, which, according to hospital administration, should have been locked, was found with signs that the padlock had been recently forced. During this period, Chief Inspector Arruda faced a significant obstacle: the lack of camera footage in the chapel and its surroundings. It was a blind spot in the hospital security system. Cameras cover the main corridors, elevators, and entrances, but not that area. Specific, precisely because it is closed, he explained. Another element that complicated the investigation was the fact that Carlos' cell phone had been turned off at 8:14 p.m., just 2 minutes after the last image of the couple on the security cameras. Marcia's device remained active until 22:37, when it was also turned off. The phone companies provided location records that indicated both devices remained in the hospital area until they were deactivated. In December 2001, another relevant piece of information emerged. A former hospital maintenance worker, Juliano Pereira, who had been fired 3 months before the disappearance, was located and questioned after anonymous reports that he knew secret passages and restricted areas of the hospital complex. Santa Casa is one of the oldest hospitals in Porto Alegre, opened in 1826. Over the years, it has undergone numerous expansions and renovations. There are underground areas, maintenance tunnels, and spaces that few people know about. Juliano revealed in his testimony. He denied any involvement in the disappearance, but provided old hospital blueprints that indicated the existence of a basement area behind the chapel, not included in the current plans. Based on this information, a new search was conducted in January 2002. Using the blueprints provided by Juliano, investigators located a door disguised in one of the wooden panels on the back wall of the chapel. The door led to a staircase that led to a basement, not mapped on the hospital's recent blueprints. The basement was thoroughly examined, but again, no direct trace of the couple was found. However, experts collected two intriguing elements: a woman's earring partially buried in the dirt floor, which the family later identified as belonging to Marcia, and marks on the wall that suggested someone had recently tried to dig or remove bricks. These discoveries revived hopes of solving the case, but also raised new questions. Why would the couple have gone to this secluded area? Were they taken by force, or did they go of their own free will? And most importantly, if they were in that basement, where did they go next? As 2002 progressed, other lines of investigation emerged. One involved a possible love triangle. Information obtained through Carlos's co-workers suggested that he might be involved with a nurse at the hospital itself. This theory, however, was never proven, and the alleged nurse was never specifically identified. Another line of investigation explored was a possibility that the disappearance was related to some accidental discovery the couple made during their visit to the hospital. This theory gained traction when, in April 2002, a former hospital security guard, who had worked there between 1998 and 2000, reported in an anonymous interview with a local newspaper that there were rumors of illicit activity taking place in the older, more isolated areas of the hospital complex. There were stories of trafficking in prescription drugs and even organs. No one ever proved anything, but several employees commented on strange movements in the older areas, especially during the early hours of the morning, said the former security guard. Police investigated these allegations but found no concrete evidence to support the theory. However, the possibility that Marcia and Carlos had witnessed something they shouldn't have and been silenced for it continued to be considered. As the months passed, the case cooled down. Police resources were gradually redirected to other, more recent investigations, although Chief Arruda refused to close the case. Until we have a definitive answer about what happened to this couple, we will continue investigating, he said in an interview given on the first anniversary of the disappearance. The family, for their part, never gave up. Lucas Oliveira, Marcia's brother, created the Rio Grande do Sul Association of Relatives of Missing Persons in 2003, which began to pressure authorities and keep the case alive in the regional media. Years passed without major progress in the investigation into Marcia and Carlos' disappearance. Between 2003 and 2010, the case was revisited periodically, with new interviews and fact checks, but without significant progress. Chief Inspector Mauricio Arruda, who led the initial investigation, retired in 2008, being replaced by Chief Inspector Fernando Vieira, who assumed responsibility for the case. In March 2011, a decade after the disappearance, the first substantial revelation occurred. The Santa Casa de Misericordia Hospital in Porto Alegre began a major renovation of the old chapel and its surrounding area. During the renovation work, while excavating to reinforce the foundations, workers discovered a sealed compartment beneath the floor of the room behind the altar, a sort of crypt not documented in the building's plans. Chief Vieira was immediately notified and arrived at the scene with a team of experts. Inside the compartment, they found several old documents related to the hospital's history, dating mainly from the early 20th century, as well as religious objects. Most significant, however, was the discovery of a partially deteriorated men's wristwatch. After analysis, the experts confirmed that it was the same model Carlos Eduardo was wearing on the night of his disappearance, a stainless steel Tissot watch that Marcia had given him for Christmas in 2000. This watch is the first concrete physical evidence we've found since Marcia's earring in 2002, the chief declared at a press conference. It confirms that the couple had somehow been in that specific area of the chapel, likely on the night of the disappearance. The discovery rekindled public interest in the case and prompted a new, meticulous investigation of the areas surrounding the chapel, using more advanced technologies than with ground-penetrating radar (GPR) available in 2001. The civil police mapped possible underground anomalies within a 50-meter radius of the chapel. In June 2011, GPR detected an area of soil disturbance approximately 12 meters from the chapel's back wall on a plot of land that was part of the hospital complex, but was unused and covered in dense vegetation. While excavating the site, investigators found a metal trunk buried approximately 1.5 meters deep. The trunk contained Marcia and Carlos's personal documents, including their ID cards, credit cards, and the car key found in the hospital parking lot, as well as their cell phones, completely deteriorated after a decade buried. There was also a small notebook with handwritten notes that experts later attributed to Carlos based on handwriting comparisons. The notes in the notebook, although partially legible due to deterioration, suggested that Carlos had been investigating something related to the hospital in the weeks before the disappearance. There were references to dates, times, and initials of people, as well as a phrase back of Chapel 22 written on the last page dated 1708/2001, the day of the disappearance. This discovery significantly altered the perspective of the investigation. The hypothesis that the couple had gone to that area by chance was replaced by the theory that Carlos was deliberately investigating something related to the hospital, possibly dragging Marcia into his search on that fateful night. In September 2012, a former hospital administrator, Roberto Azevedo, who had worked at the institution between 1995 and 2002, voluntarily contacted police after learning of the latest findings. In a confidential statement, he revealed that Carlos Eduardo had contacted him a few weeks before the disappearance, asking about rumors of financial irregularities at the hospital. He mentioned hearing stories about embezzlement of donations and wanted to know if I was aware of it. I said I didn't know anything concrete, but that I had also heard rumors. I suggested he leave it to the proper authorities, but he seemed determined to investigate on his own, he reported. Azevedo, this testimony opened a new line of investigation. The federal police were involved to investigate possible financial crimes related to the hospital's management during the relevant period. In parallel, the civil police continued to look for connections between these alleged irregularities and the couple's disappearance. In 2015, another significant breakthrough occurred. A patient who was admitted to Santa Casa Hospital in August 2001, Luia Montero, then 76 years old, watched a television report about the case during the 154th anniversary of the disappearance and contacted the police. According to her, on the night of August 17, 2001, around 9 p.m., while walking to the hospital garden, something she did against medical advice but which helped her deal with insomnia, she saw a man and a woman being approached by two individuals dressed in what appeared to be hospital maintenance uniforms near the side entrance to the chapel. They seemed to be arguing. The woman looked scared. I was far away and it was night, so I couldn't hear what they were saying, but I saw the four of them enter through a side door. At the time, I didn't pay any attention because I thought they were employees carrying out some kind of inspection. Only years later, seeing the couple's photo on television, did I realize they could be the people who disappeared, testified Dona Luia. Although late, this testimony was considered crucial as it corroborated the theory that Marcia and Carlos had been intercepted by third parties, possibly people linked to the irregularities that Carlos was investigating. Leave a comment and never give up on the truth if you believe that all missing people deserve to be found. In January 2023, almost 22 years after the disappearance of Marcia Oliveira and Carlos Eduardo Mendez, the Santa Casa de Misericordia Hospital in Porto Alegre began a broad modernization project that included the demolition of some old structures and the revitalization of others. The historic chapel, due to its heritage value, will be preserved and restored. During preparatory work for the restoration, on March 15, 2023, a team of workers removing debris and vegetation from the area outside the back of the chapel made a macabre discovery. When they removed an irregular concrete slab, apparently added in an improvised manner decades earlier, they found a cavity that had been sealed. Inside it were two human skeletons. The civil police were immediately called, and Delegate Helena Montero, who had taken over the case in 2019 after Fernando Vieira's retirement, personally coordinated the forensic work. The area was cordoned off and treated as a crime scene, and the remains were carefully removed and sent to the Forensic Institute for analysis. Preliminary examinations indicated that it was a man and a woman, with ages compatible with those of Carlos and Marcia at the time of their disappearance. DNA tests were carried out using sample provided by Lucas Oliveira, Marcia's brother, and Paulo Mendez, Carlos' brother. On March 30th, 2023, the results confirmed what many already suspected. The remains were, in fact, those of the couple who had been missing for more than 2 decades. Forensic analysis of the skeletons revealed disturbing details about Marcia and Carlos's final moments. Both had skull fractures consistent with blunt force trauma. Carlos also had fractures in 3 ribs in his right arm, suggesting he had been involved in a physical fight before he died. Marcia had a fracture in the iodide bone, indicating possible strangulation. Examinations indicate that both were victims of homicide. Based on the findings, we can say that Carlos tried to defend himself and his wife, engaging in physical combat with the attacker or attackers, while Marcia was possibly subdued by strangulation, explained the coroner, Dr. Marcelo Rodriguez. The location where the bodies were found provided other important clues. The cavity had been sealed with concrete in an improvised manner, but professionally enough to go unnoticed during the initial searches. A chemical analysis of the concrete indicated that it had been applied between August 16th and 20th, 2001, a period that coincides with the disappearance. With this new evidence, the investigation gained renewed momentum. Delegate Montero requested from the hospital administration the records of all maintenance and construction employees who worked during the period of the disappearance. Cross-referencing this information with attendance records from the night of August 17, 2001, two names emerged as suspects: Ernesto Silveira and Rogerio Campos, both hired as maintenance assistants in 1999. After a detailed investigation into the suspects' current whereabouts, police discovered that Ernesto had died in 2017 in a traffic accident. Rogerio, on the other hand, had moved to the interior of Santa Catarina in 2003, where he lived under a false identity. He was located and arrested on April 12, 2023. During interrogation, Rogerio initially denied any involvement. However, faced with forensic evidence and the possibility of a reduced sentence if he confessed, he ended up revealing shocking details about the crime. According to his account, he and Ernesto not only worked on hospital maintenance, but also performed extra services for a group of administrators involved in a scheme to embezzle funds. Carlos Eduardo, who had a friend working in the hospital's accounting department, had discovered evidence of these irregularities and began investigating on his own. Ernesto overheard engineer Carlos asking questions about ghost jobs and inflated invoices. He told his bosses, and they told us to scare him just to get him to stop poking his nose where he shouldn't. Rogerio confessed. On the night of August 17, 2001, after confirming that Carlos and his wife were at the hospital visiting her father, Ernesto and Rogerio approached them as they were leaving, claiming they needed technical assistance in a maintenance area. Carlos, a civil engineer, was persuaded to give an opinion on alleged structural problems in the chapel area. The idea was just to scare him, tell him we knew what he was investigating and that he should stop. But when we got back there, he said he already had enough evidence and would go to the police the next day. Ernesto lost his temper and attacked him. The woman started screaming and I silenced her, Rogerio recounted, visibly distraught during confession. After the double homicide, in a panic, the two men decided to hide the bodies. Taking advantage of an excavation being done to repair the chapel's foundation, they placed the bodies in the cavity and sped up the concrete work that same night. We returned the next day with the necessary tools and materials and poured the concrete. We told the supervisor that we had moved up the work because the area was leaking, he explained. Rogerio also revealed that they collected the couple's personal belongings, documents, cell phones and keys, and buried them in another location days later, fearing they could be traced. This information confirmed the discovery of the metal chest in 2011. As for Carlos' watch found in the crypt under the altar, Rogerio stated that it had probably fallen during the fight, and they had not noticed. Marcia's earring found in the basement in 2002 was also explained. The couple had been taken along that path before reaching the outdoor area where they were killed. With Rogerio's confession, the police obtained the names of administrators and employees allegedly involved in the embezzlement scheme that Carlos had uncovered. 3 former hospital directors were indicted for criminal association and embezzlement, as well as murder by order, although 2 of them had already died. On August 17, 2023, exactly 22 years after their disappearance, a ceremony was held in memory of Marcia and Carlos. Santa Casa Hospital, now under new management, unveiled a memorial in the garden near the chapel with a plaque that read, "In memory of Marcia Oliveira and Carlos Eduardo Mendez, whose quest for truth and justice will never be forgotten." Lucas Oliveira, now 63, spoke emotionally during the ceremony. "For 22 years, we lived in uncertainty and hope. Today, although the pain of loss is immense, there is some comfort in finally knowing the truth and being able to give my sister and brother-in-law a dignified rest." The Marcia and Carlos case, as it became known, led to significant changes in security protocols of hospitals in Porto Alegre and throughout Rio Grande do Sul. Security cameras now cover 100% of hospital areas, including maintenance areas and outdoor areas. Stricter procedures for hiring and supervising employees have also been implemented. For Rio Grande do Sul society, the outcome of the case represented a grim reminder of how greed and corruption can lead to tragic consequences. But it also demonstrated that even after more than 2 decades, the truth can come to light and justice, however late, can be achieved. The legal proceedings against Rogerio Campos and the surviving administrators are still ongoing. Rogerio was charged with double homicide and concealment of corpse and could face up to 60 years in prison. As for the skeletons of Marcia and Carlos, after all the necessary examinations, they were finally handed over to the family in September 2023. They were buried side by side in the San Miguel and Alma Cemetery in Porto Alegre, in the presence of family, friends, and many people who followed the case over the years. The story of Marcia and Carlos teaches us about the importance of persistence in the search for the truth, about how secrets, no matter how well kept, eventually come to light. It also reminds us of the fragility of life and how it can be brutally cut short when we least expect it. If you've watched this far, it's because you care about these cases that mark families forever. Leave a comment saying, "I've watched this far," so I can get to know you and who really cares about the pursuit of truth. Don't forget to like this video so it reaches more people and helps keep the memory of those who disappeared alive. And share with friends and family who are also interested in real cases of investigation and justice. Subscribe to the channel to follow more stories like this, where we seek not only to report the facts, but to honor the memory of the victims and celebrate the tireless search for the truth. Yeah,